Welcome to Bandit's Keep. I'm Daniel. Today I want to talk a little bit about prep. And this is really to answer a question that I got on a video. I think it was one of my basic ways to run a game or something to that effect. And the statement was, if there's not a linear story, what do you do to prep? Is everything just random? And I think that's a really good question. You know, part of me could look at it and be like, are they trying to criticize and say that my game is random and it's kind of an insult? But I don't look at things like that. I think when somebody asks a question, I like to believe that it's a genuine question that people want to know. And I could see somebody who's only come from adventure path type games thinking to themselves, if there's no end goal that's set up by the DM at the beginning, how do you know what happens? Is everything just random? And, what I said to them and what I'll say here is that it's not random. It's decided by the players. So let's take this piece by piece. Number one, what do you prep? So if you're running a open world sandbox like I am, with no linear plot lines or storylines, no end goal, no finishing thing, no boss, what is it that you create? Well, the way that I prep is I create the world in loose brush strokes. And with that, and this comes down to a few things. Known places, that is maps, known maps meaning maps of the world, known places as in adventure sites, and known personalities. And again, when I say known, I mean known to me. Other ones will surface as we go, but these are things that I'm going to put on my map that I know. This kingdom is run by the Witch Queen. This kingdom is run by a very greedy king that's that keeps consuming the lands around him, and he's pushing out, right? He's trying to take over more and more land. This area up here is where the forest is, and the elves live there. If you want to be real standard, right? And this is what I have on my map. Generally speaking, so starting is different, right? So I'm talking about middle of the campaign. So here I am, and I'm running my campaign, and we've been running for over 3 years. And what am I prepping day to day? What am I doing? Well, the player characters, as they move forward, will begin to create ripples in a pond, like the butterfly effect, right? Everything you do makes a difference. So if there is a greedy king expanding, that might push some people out that don't stay to defend the lands, right? So we might see people coming into towns, and the PCs might be curious about that, right? That means there might be caravans that need guarding. There might be mercenary work for towns that want to defend themselves against the king's troops. This is all stuff that's going on, and depending on what the player characters are interested in, this is the kind of thing they'll find. So you create NPCs, you create rumors, you create interactions that the player characters have. If you imagine that you show up, right? You're in this medieval-ish fantasy world of D&D, and you're adventurers, and you've got a goal, right? You want to get rich, you want to get famous, you want to, own a castle. Maybe you want to find the most powerful spell in the world. Maybe you want to prove something to your family or get back the good family name because something happened, right? These are all goals the characters have. And when you drop them into a situation where there's lots of stuff going on, they'll look for it, right? But the most immediate thing that generally happens is that player characters need to adventure to get money, right? To live in the world. So at low levels, you're just going to create things that are opportunities for them to be able to survive, right? From there, they'll meet people, they'll become friends with people, and through that, they will kind of go from there. So I'll give you a quick little example of a kind of a plot, if you will, that developed in the game. That this was like a year and a half ago at this point. So the player characters had been traveling, and they came into this village, and at first they were the village guards who the player characters could have easily killed because they were like 4th level at that point, or something, 3rd or 4th level, and these are regular humans. And they immediately tried to, you can't come in here, they were very hostile. And instead of cutting them down, instead of doing stuff, the player characters thought, well, what's going on here? And they allowed themselves to be disarmed and brought in and met with the village leader, who basically through, some conversation, they found out that children were going missing. Now, the characters decided that they were heading somewhere else. They decided that this was a big deal and that this was not something that they would let stand. The village did not hire them. Nobody told them to do anything. They got a little bit of information. Then they went on and did the quest that they were doing, which was to go to this tower and kind of clear it out, which somebody did ask them to do, but they were doing it in exchange for a spell. because in my world, you have to learn spells. You don't just get them when you level up. So once they did this and they got the spell, they said, there's these people missing. And they went to a ruler of one of the cities they were friendly with and told them and negotiated and got from them some supply. They got some horses and stuff because they said, we want to go figure out what's going on. And they did. They went out, they looked around, they figured out that they actually got into a big fight. They captured a couple of the people that were guarding basically a portal that was leading to where they were taking these children. They kind of recruited them. And weirdly enough, one of them, because they were neutral, was recruited by the party, was a henchman for a long time, and eventually became a player character, when somebody took them over. So it's kind of funny. But basically, they were being taken to this other island, but it was all very secretive because I play in a place where there's a lot of islands. So the party went to the other island to figure out what's going on. Again, nobody's asked them to do this. They just felt like there's something brewing here, right? They went there. They started looking around. They figured out they could kind of see what was going on. And there was, again, not going too deeply into this, but there was a high priest that seemed to be very convincing. They met actually another chaotic priest and kind of, said, they didn't want this person in charge. And the player characters thought something was up. So this chaotic priest was kind of helping them, which, that's another thread. But basically, in the end, they took out this chaotic priest, not the one that was friendly with them, but the one that was ruling this area. But they kind of screwed up. And when they did, they were seen by a couple of guards and they were known. So the guards went looking for them. And they, of course, hid because they knew they were seen. But what they had left behind at the tavern where they were staying, and everybody knew they were staying, was their henchmen and hirelings and a low-level NPC that they had befriended and were working with. When they finally got out of where they were hiding and they went to the tavern, they saw that they had been taken. They were sold off as slaves. So now they go to the island where the slaving is going on, and they find this entire slave ring. So you can see, this is still going, right? Basically, all these things lead to another, and none of it was planned by me. All I knew was this priest was doing these rituals, and for it they needed to basically have human sacrifices. I decided children because, of course, knowing players, they're going to want to save children, right? So, I kind of, you got to stack the deck a little bit in your favor. But they very easily could have went to the town and been like, oh, wow, that sucks. The kids are gone, and went on to what they were doing. They had other stuff they were doing, right? So, and they did. They come back around to things, and it's really fun to see them remember something where they're like, oh, right. So this was happening here. We should deal with that now. And they'll pull resources out that they've seen in the past. So they'll remember that they had this thing when they want to do something else. And this is where it comes from. So what do I prep? I prep the general world, and then wherever they're going, I will flesh it out as they're there. Sometimes I have to do it on the fly, yes. Sometimes they go someplace completely unexpected, and I just go off my bullet points and I kind of make it work, right, as I'm going. But generally speaking, I've got a little bit of time. Usually, I believe we play once a week, so I've got enough time to kind of flesh out enough of the area to get us going. So when you are running a non-linear, open-world sandbox, the prep that you do is highly, highly dependent on what the players are doing. The stories that are created are based on what the players' characters are doing. They have nothing to do with the big bad per se. You could say that priest was a big bad, but he wasn't. He was a powerful person that they took out because they didn't like that they were doing stuff. And it wasn't like the campaign ended and it was like, oh, okay, big bad gone. Or it wasn't like he was a mini boss and they followed to the next boss. And no, they actually moved on, although there is more going on and they know that. They're watching it. They're trying to figure out what's happening over there. But they've moved on to something else now. And that's fine. And that's awesome. And that's how we like to play. If you like a more linear adventure, that's also cool. And in some ways, you might think it's easier to prep that. And maybe in some ways it is because you're a little tighter. But I think that in some ways it's not. Because with a more linear adventure, you've got to create feasible reasons that the player characters can't just do something else. Whereas in the open world sandbox, they can do whatever they want. If I create this thing with the children being taken and they don't deal with it, there's something else that they'll do. and that's fine. And I don't have to say, well, but they offer you a lot of things, or they do this, or your friend's child is now taken. I don't have to add all kinds of extra stuff to keep them on the way. I just create what's in front of them, and usually about a week or so out, I'll start to flesh out different areas. That's enough time for me to kind of figure out. We only play like 3-hour sessions, 2.5, 3-hour sessions. So it's never really an issue to create enough content to play through the areas they want to explore. So hopefully that is helpful to the person asking the question. I wish I had saved their name. I always forget to do that. And to other people, I would love to hear in the comments what you think about this. If you run a sandbox or want to run a sandbox, or if you run a more linear style adventure, how do you do it? What do you prep on a week-to-week basis, on a campaign-to-campaign basis? What's important to you to make your game work for your players to have the most fun? Let me know in the comments below. Also, check the description below. You'll find a link to my Discord server. Sign up over there and join the conversation, and my Patreon if you'd like to support the channel. I'll talk to you soon.